The other day, Donald Trump was inaugurated as the 47th President of the United States. I was actually surprised that Kamala Harris would actually certify the vote, considering she was the competition for the presidency. As the vice president, she would be the one that finalizes the certification in the Senate, for she is the president of the Senate. I believe that this is something that needs to change in the United States of America, because I believe that the Democrats planned for Kamala Harris to actually just not certify the vote and cause some havoc. There's a conflict of interest when the vice president that has so much authority over how that election is going to go is the opposition in the election. But I've covered that so much that I'm just not going to cover it anymore. It seems like this is what people should be thinking anyway. What I want to talk about is the fact that in his speech after his inauguration, he said that he was going to get rid of the concept of anchor babies, and how the press on the left and even some incompetent lawyers are saying that that's unconstitutional. I want to talk about why it is constitutional and why the anchor baby thing exists in the first place. In 1898, the Supreme Court ruled in the case, landmark case as a matter of fact, called the U.S. versus Wong Angel Kim. I can't remember his full name, but Wong Kim is an American-born and U.S. citizen. But he was born to two Chinese parents who did not have their citizenship. He left for China for a funeral. And upon re-entry into the U.S., which had been his home his entire life, he had been denied entry. This went to court, all the way to the Supreme Court. and the Supreme Court found in his favor. Alright. This is what the left uses as the precedent for the anchor baby thing. An anchor baby is a child that is born intentionally for the sole purpose of bringing the rest of the family into America. This in itself is fraud. In Wong Kim's case, he was born in America. His parents were working. They were kidnapped. They were handed over to the Pacific Railroad, and they were laying track or working for the railroad in some capacity. This was before work visas. This was before any concern of why you were here in the first place. The railroad got finished, and his parents were not needed by the railroad anymore. So they were without a job, and they ended up opening a little Chinese restaurant in San Francisco, in what would become San Francisco's famous Chinatown. But they were never U.S. citizens. They were brought here by force, and they made a success out of their situation. The reason that Wong Kim's case does not work for the anchor baby argument is these illegal immigrants that are coming over the southern border, and literally dropping a child just on the other side of the Rio Grande, so they can say that their baby was born in the U.S. This act is fraud. It's criminal. They had every knowledge that she was going to have a baby. They had every reason not to allow that woman and soon-to-be child to travel until that baby was stable. Instead, the criminal intent is shown, because that baby becomes the very reason that Mom and Junior are going to make this dangerous trip. The very reason that they're willing to risk everything. Because the liberals in this country believe that that immigrants will automatically vote for Democrats if they are allowed to stay in this country. As soon as they get indoctrinated into how the electoral system works and how corrupt the Democrat Party is, most immigrants do not want to vote for a Democrat. That's just the way it is. In an honest election, the Democrats have never had the Slavic vote. They have never had the Asian American vote. They might have had the South American Hispanic vote. But the only reason they might have had the Hispanic vote is because the other immigrant groups learned English before they came here. They got jobs, they became more proficient in English, and they realized that the Democrats are lying to them. So they need the Hispanic vote, and they do not want them to learn English. It used to be that in order to even apply for a green card, you had to be the one to fill it out. A translator was not allowed in the room, and it was intentionally in English. It was your first test toward citizenship. This has probably changed. But the left is going completely apeshit right now because Donald Trump flat out said that anchor babies is not going to be a thing anymore. Now, there's a difference between somebody that is born into America and their parents are on a legal visa to work or study in America. They're sponsored legally and they're not breaking any laws. To a couple that has never been in America, conceiving a child, going, hey, look, this is the opportunity of a lifetime for us. We can use your having a child to change our stars. We can use our child to get away from these gangs and this poverty and find a future for us. But therein lies the problem. They're using the same mentality that created the problems of their own country to illegally come into our country. They're using the criminal mindset in order to justify coming to America without any preparation. They don't bother to learn English. They don't even want to learn English. They are hoping that corrupt companies, and trust me, I'm ex-Border Patrol. There are plenty of corrupt companies, especially on the coastlines and the southern border, that will look the other way. They will find a translator for you. They will do everything that they can to make sure that you have what you need as long as you work for them. Now, you're undocumented. Okay? You're undocumented. Your child might be legal under the Democrat model. But up to the point that you actually went to Social Security and said, my child was just born here in America, this was a circumstance, I need to apply for a Social Security card for. The parents are undocumented. They don't exist in this country. Now, what that means for the employer is, you're undocumented, I don't need to pay you. You're undocumented, I don't need to follow the rules that I have to for these other people, because they're citizens and they actually have rights. For the same argument, the left likes to use the 14th Amendment that says that any citizen born, or any person born within the borders of the United States of America is deemed a citizen and afforded the rights and protections of the title of American citizen. The very act of creating the felony of coming over the southern border illegally removes any rights as a citizen automatically. It's akin to a man that just robbed a bank, getting convicted, spending 30 years in jail, eventually getting out, and then applying to own a legal gun. The NICS system would automatically reject you. You no longer have the right to legally own a gun, because you chose to violate our laws. Now, should that be extended to the unborn child? Yes. Why do I say that? Because that child was not conceived here. The parents had what's called the mens rea, the cognitive intent to violate our laws, smuggle themselves into the United States of America, put themselves in danger and their child in order to do so, possibly sell everything that they owned in order to do so, to people that would take their heads if they don't pay, or put you into some form of slavery indefinitely. So their child could be born in America. If we bend over backwards for that kind of behavior, we're putting future children in danger. Which is something that nobody that has any kind of morals, any kind of heart, should ever even entertain. Because the child is the future. That child should be protected. Whether or not the parents should be protected for the actions that they just put that child through, even if a child isn't even aware of it, is really up for argument. I argue that everything that couple did to commit the levels of fraud that they had to commit in order to come over the border, whether it's climb a wall, dig a tunnel, smuggle themselves through in a car at an actual checkpoint. Everything that they did up to that point should be considered in whether or not they are allowed to stay. We don't know how many murders that family was willing to commit, or even has committed, just to get across that border. We don't know if the coyotes that were transporting them actually had the intention of keeping them safe, or whether or not they were going to be slaves for some kind of Mexican gang that's dealing drugs or prostitution on the other side. We can assume that, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen, because human trafficking is exactly what the Democrat Party has always been about. Remember, this is the party of the Ku Klux Klan. This is the party of Jim Crow, and this is the party of slave ownership. They don't want to change, they've never wanted to change, and they never will change. If you call yourself a Democrat, you are automatically a criminal. The reason that it is so important that we get rid of this interpretation of whether or not a child should be considered an American citizen if they're born here, is for the safety of future children coming across the border for any reason. Like I said, in Wong Kim's case, his parents didn't have a choice in the coming over here. He was born into the situation. And he was actually born and conceived in America. What we are talking about with the term anchor babies is not and has nothing to do with a situation that Wong Kim found himself in. All he ever knew was America. And the government of San Francisco and the federal government did him wrong. Through that whole time. He fought for his citizenship again for 50 years. His parents died, and they wanted to be buried in the homeland. As many of my friends' parents would also request. This should not be something that should be argued. What should be the situation is more about whether or not the intention of staying in America was founded on fraudulent means. Yes, a lot of people overstay their visas. Student visas, work visas, marriage visas. But in most cases, if they got the visa in the first place and they overstayed because they didn't realize it was expired, they just reapply. 2 weeks later, they have the paperwork that says they're legal to be in the country again, and they go on with life. The left makes it sound like it is so hard to work with immigration. It's not. And it never really was. But we have issues in this country that have to do with absolute corruption. The Democrat Party are in the pockets of big business. Corrupted factories that don't want to deal with having to pay a decent wage to everybody in their employment is the very problem that the left wants to avoid. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. One of the reasons that this podcast is late this week is because I'm nursing a broken foot. And and it's kind of hard to actually get into some of the positions that I need to be in to film the podcast. And last week was a brand new thing, so I was still learning. I want to make one thing very clear. On the West Coast where I live, even without a border patrol badge, I have run into and worked with just personally dozens of companies that would rather work with somebody that does not speak English and is not documented. Not because of her work ethic, because they don't want to pay them. The abuse that goes on with these unwitting immigrants, and I don't want to even call them immigrants. They're victims. They're victims of a Democrat Party. But they're also victims of human trafficking. And they're victims of their own stupidity. It is very hard for them to say no to an entire family that is of working age that will pack themselves into a car that barely runs, come to work, and keep working even though they're not being paid, because the factory owns the apartment building that they are living in. I hope that people are understanding what I'm saying, because Donald Trump is going to see so much backlash from people that think that they're fighting for the right things, but do not understand the landscape of what they're actually fighting for. All I want is for people to understand that the true battle is to get the people that are honest enough to want to come over to America, but don't necessarily know how, to learn how. Because they will find themselves into some real evil situations beyond reality if they do not actually jump through the right hoops and take the time to plan their escape from whatever situation they're in. Immigration is not closed in America, and it never will be. Just do it right. Because if you don't, you run into people like Nancy Pelosi, or Chuck Schumer, or AOC, or countless others that benefit firsthand from the men and women that are not savvy enough to realize that they are being taken advantage of, or that they put themselves into a situation where they financially cannot remove themselves from the situation until they fix the problem that they got into. And usually it's something like this. Okay, I came to America. I have no place to stay on my own. You're supplying a place to stay. You're not paying me. I don't have food on the table except for the food stamps that the state is giving me, even though I didn't deserve them in the first place. And you're giving me a roof to put over my family's head. That situation traps people because they don't know how to get out of it. If you find yourself in a situation like that, go to patriotsmustrise.org. Leave me a message, and I will help you out. That's what I excuse me. That's what I have for today. I am very glad that we don't have that parasite in the White House anymore, and even more glad that we don't have that used tampon in the White House, or the douchebag. That was the most evil ticket that you could ever come across, being offered up by the far left. Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, I don't understand how they think that they even had a chance to win. Okay, there's going to be a link in the description to an ongoing fictional drama that I've been working on, that is designed to help educate people on how a lot of this stuff works. It's a fun story. It's called No Compromise. Please check it out. Also, about now, there's a QR code in the upper corner. Please use it to support the channel. I am on full disability right now, and my family could really use the help. Until next time, live free, die well, and love your neighbor as Christ has loved you. I am Anatoly Anatolitseva, and this is Patriots Must Rise.